Howdy, howdy, folks. Nicky Steve's back. This is part of my series where I'm going to do my ranking of the top 5 greatest players in each NBA team's history. And for those that this is your first video you're catching in the series, I got it in alphabetical order by city name in the playlist, so you guys can check it out there. And for mine, I'm using each player one time, so I can only use a certain player once, which is going to create an interesting dynamic for the Cleveland Cavaliers and Miami Heat, top 5 greatest for their respective franchises. Same with the Lakers and Magic, so on and so forth. Now, if you guys want to do your own list in the comments, but you want to use player for more than one team, you are welcome to do so. I'm just letting you know that I'm only using each player once, so you won't see Shaq on both the Lakers and the Magic. I have to pick one or the other. Same with LeBron, Cavs or Heat, I have to pick one or the other. But I'm sure you guys already know which one it is, but that's beside the point. Just to give you an overview, if this is your first video you're catching in the series, of how I'm doing my list. Now, let's get into it. Before I get into the top 5, I'm going to do a few honorable mentions for the Boston Celtics, especially being that they're one of the most storied franchises in NBA history. I'm going to start off with honorable mentions, Rajon Rondo. Now, he was never a top player. He was never, a superstar, but he was a good role player for the Boston teams, especially in the late 2000s, early 2010s during their contention window. He played a role in that 2008 championship team, along with the big three of Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett. Another honorable mention coming from the late 90s, early 2000s Boston Celtics, a teammate of Paul Pierce, Antoine Walker. He's a pretty underrated player. There's a name a lot of people forgot. Him and Paul Pierce were in the early 2000s. They made the playoffs a couple times. They were a bit of a thorn to the Nets, and they were never a championship team, but they were still a solid, respectable team early in the 2000s. Antoine Walker helped play a role in keeping the Boston Celtics relevant, along with Paul Pierce during that era, that post-Jordan into the Kobe era, before the for the Boston Celtics. There's another one. I'm going to go with Jaylen Brown. He didn't quite crack the top 5, but he's certainly an honorable mention and worthy of recognition. He's been an excellent role player. He played his role well. He was the Finals MVP last year. Certainly, and he's certainly going to be, him and Jason Tatum are the 2 stars of the Boston Celtics' current team. Will they be a future dynasty? That remains to be seen, but I figured one would crack the top 5, the other would get the honorable mention. Since, spoiler alert, Tatum cracked the top 5, Jaylen Brown, his partner in crime, who's been vital to the Boston Celtics' success in recent years, reaching 2 finals and winning a finals, deserves an honorable mention. Now, with that being said, let's get into the top 5. We'll start off with Jason Tatum. He was the number 3 pick in the 2017 NBA draft when the Sixers moved up to try to get McHale Fultz, but that didn't really work out as planned. But hey, it happened. You can't always hit on them all. Sometimes you try your best, but you just can't always get there. And Tatum, he was, out of Duke, 3rd pick. He's been a multi-time All-Star. He helped lead the Celtics to an NBA Finals. He's been considered the face of the franchise in this modern era, and helped bring the Celtics back to glory alongside Jaylen Brown, who got the honorable mention for this. And Jason Tatum still has more room to go, so maybe we do another list a few years from now. Maybe he could move up a spot or 2. But as of right now, I got him as my number 5. My number 4, I'm going to go with Robert Parish, the center who was part of that team with Larry Bird, that big 3 along with Kevin McHale. Oh, there's another honorable mention, Kevin McHale. Multi-time All-Star, part of the big 3. Didn't quite crack the list, but he was pretty close, and he at least deserves acknowledgement. So there's Kevin McHale's another honorable mention. But back to number 4, Robert Parish, the number 2 guy behind Larry Bird. He was a 9-time All-Star, 3 championship wins with the Celtics, and he won a championship with the Bulls late in his career, but he was part of those 3 with the Celtics and a 9-time All-Star. I feel like Bird and Parish, that was a codependent relationship as teammates as far as their success as a team in the 80s go. Robert Parish is definitely a top 5 all-time. He wasn't the guy, but he was one of the main guys for that team. I feel like without him, you wouldn't have had as many championships. And then number 3 is Paul Pierce. Longtime Celtic. He was loyal to the team. 10th pick in the 1998 NBA draft out of Kansas. 10-time All-Star for the Boston Celtics. He helped keep that franchise relevant. Him and Antoine Walker were a pretty good duo. Not a championship team, but they were a good team throughout the seasons in the late 90s, early 2000s. Helped bring the Celtics back to relevancy. Then they had the down years in the mid-2000s where Pierce stayed loyal, helped out. Then they got Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, formed that big three, won a championship. Pierce was the finals MVP, and he was the glue to that entire era of the Celtics' return to relevance. In the late 90s into the early 2010s, he was there for the 2 championship appearances, won the finals MVP the year they won it in 2008, had his jersey retired by the organization. Easily one of those all-time great Celtics. Now, this is where it gets interesting with 2 and 1. For everybody's list, you're going to have the same 2 players. It's just a matter of where do you rank them. Who do you put as your greatest? Who do you put as your second? Some people are going to have Russell as their greatest. Some will have Larry Bird as their greatest. For my number 2, giving away the spoiler alert for who my greatest Celtic is, I got Bill Russell. Now, some people are going to go with Russell as their Celtics GOAT because of the rings. Now, I'll explain in a minute why I have Bird over him despite Russell having more rings. Now, when it comes to Bill Russell, he was the 2nd pick in the 1956 NBA draft out of San Francisco. This was during an era where the color barrier was still predominant in North American sports. And the Boston Celtics, being one of the most progressive organizations in sports history with eliminating the color barrier, drafted Bill Russell. He helped break down the color barrier along with Wilt Chamberlain. And he did it with Boston. 11-time champion, 12-time All-Star. The most successful player-coach as he became a player and a coach in the later stages and continued to lead them to championship wins. He was the guy that put the Boston Celtics on the map for their all-time history. But despite this, I'm going to put him the number 2, and here's why. Despite the team success, the one asterisk on that era is it was a weak era. The competition wasn't as strong. It was a lot easier for a dominant team with the right pieces to win championship after championship after championship. A lot harder to do that when you have 20, 25, or 30 teams like some of the dynasties have done in recent years, in our lifetime, like the Bulls with Jordan, the Lakers with Kobe, the Warriors, so on and so forth. But just because it came during an era where it's easy to win so many rings, I got to put him number 2. And number 1, greatest Celtic, Larry Bird. And the reason why is because Bird was the face of the franchise during the first, during that peak era in popularity. During, the Bird-Johnson rivalry. Larry Bird was the first pick 1978 out of Indiana. He was a 12-time All-Star, 3-time MVP, 2-time Finals MVP, 3-time Finals champion with the Boston Celtics. But this came during a tougher era where you had competition such as the Showtime Lakers, the Philadelphia 76ers with Dr. J, Moses Malone and company. You had the bad boy Pistons eventually rose. The Celtics won those championships during that era. They even played the Rockets in one of those finals during the early years of Akeem Olajuwon's career. To say Larry Bird, he helped keep the Celtics prevalent as the most decorated NBA team of all time. As soon as the competition got tougher, but the Celtics stayed on top. They beat the Lakers multiple times and beat them 2 out of 3 times between 84 and 86 in the finals. And Larry Bird was the main guy responsible for that. So for that, because Larry Bird played in a tougher era, I'm going to put him over Bill Russell. Some of you guys might have Russell over Bird, and that's cool. You're more than welcome to rank them wherever you see fit. But hey, that's part of what makes these sports subjects fun, is we can respectfully disagree on where we rank players. We can respectfully have our own list. So there's my top 5 greatest Celtics. You guys, as I just indicated, are more than welcome to comment your 5. Make sure you drop a like. And I do have, if you want to see my other videos for the rest of the teams, I got it in a playlist in alphabetical order by city. So if you want to check out the other teams, who I rank as my top 5, or want to leave your comments on those videos, who your top 5s are for each respective team, feel free to do so. That's it. Until next time, peace.